Have you ever shared something from deep inside your heart and later wished you hadn't? It's not because you were wrong to open up. It's because as we grow older, we begin to realize some parts of our story were never meant for public hands. They're not secrets, they're sacred. There comes a time in life, often in the quiet moments after the kids have grown, the noise has faded, and the house finally falls silent. When something powerful settles in, you begin to see your life not just as a series of years, but as a sacred story. You've lived, you've loved, you've lost, and you've learned. And suddenly, you realize something. Not everything you carry inside was meant to be shared. Today, we're diving into the 5 things you should never share in old age, because your peace, your dignity, and your legacy are too precious to be handed out carelessly. Stick with me, because this video is about protecting your inner life, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. If you're over 50, or walking through life with a little more grey in your hair and a little more fire in your soul, this message is for you. Give this video a thumbs up if you value emotional wisdom. Drop a 1 in the comments if you've ever shared something and later wished you hadn't. And don't forget to hit subscribe so we can keep building this powerful, honest community together. Let's start with something most people don't talk about: the emotional cost of oversharing. Society teaches us that openness is strength, and in many ways, that's true. Vulnerability, when offered to the right people, is deeply healing. But after a certain point in life, you realize not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Sharing the wrong thing with the wrong person doesn't just damage your reputation. It can fracture your sense of self. That's what happened to Arthur. Arthur was a retired teacher in his 70s. Gentle, intelligent, deeply kind. He believed that if he shared his pain, it would bring him relief. So when a new acquaintance seemed trustworthy, he opened up about a deeply personal regret. Weeks later, that story became gossip, mocked, twisted, and passed. Around their small town, like an old rumor, Arthur stopped going to the cafe, stopped smiling as much. A part of him retreated, and though he never said it, you could see it in his eyes. Something inside him dimmed. Let that be your reminder. Privacy is power, and this brings us to one of the most delicate pieces of our inner world, the regrets we carry from a life fully lived. Regret is not weakness. It's wisdom earned through fire. But when you hand it over too freely, people may define you by your lowest moment. Arthur regretted not standing up to his abusive father, but what others never saw was the lifetime he spent teaching young men how to be brave, how to speak up, how to stand tall. That regret fueled a legacy, but when he shared it openly, people stopped seeing the full picture. They saw only his pain. Let your regrets shape you, not label you. They belong to you. And here's the deeper truth. When we share our regrets too quickly, we're often still seeking validation, hoping someone will say, "You did the best you could." But real healing doesn't come from someone else forgiving your past. It comes from you accepting it, learning from it, and using it to strengthen your values moving forward. Mark, a 62-year-old man I once spoke with, carried a lifelong regret about not reconciling with his brother before he passed. He used to talk about it with anyone who would listen, hoping the pain would fade. But instead, it became his identity. Until one day, Mark shifted. He wrote a letter to his late brother, read it aloud privately, and then burned it. He said, "That was the first time I felt peace, not because someone told me it was okay, but because I finally said what I needed to, without needing anyone else's permission." Practical tip: if you're carrying a regret that won't let go, try writing it down. Say what needs to be said, to yourself or to someone who's no longer here. Then, find a way to ritualize the release. Burn it, bury it, let it go. That pain, doesn't have to be spoken to strangers to be real. It can be honored quietly. Have you ever shared a regret and felt misunderstood? Drop a heart if this hit close to home, or share a lesson you learned from your own past. But just as our inner wounds deserve care, so does the way we protect another vulnerable area of life, our finances. Money is personal, but too often, we're pressured into revealing everything, especially when we reach retirement age. People assume they're entitled to know, how much do you have? What did you save? What will you leave behind? But here's the truth. When someone knows exactly what you own, you stop being a person and start becoming a resource. I knew a woman named Darlene. She was 68, widowed, with a quiet strength and modest lifestyle. When she casually mentioned to a friend that she had a solid retirement fund, that friend slowly turned into something else, constantly hinting at money problems, inviting herself on trips, and even joking about loaning me a few thousand. It stopped being friendship. It became positioning. Darlene eventually pulled back and she told me, I learned the hard way. Just because someone smiles with you doesn't mean they're safe with your truth. In older age, finances become a magnet for other people's expectations. You may want to help others, and that's beautiful. But being generous doesn't mean giving everyone access to your numbers. Practical tip. Create financial boundaries. If someone asks directly, you can say, I'm in a good place, thank you for asking, and leave it there. Or if needed, use gentle redirection. That's something I keep private, but I appreciate your concern. Have you ever noticed people treating you differently once they knew about your finances? Comment safe below if you believe in protecting what you've built. And while financial privacy protects your future, there's another layer of vulnerability many people overlook. The stories of our past pain. Every scar tells a story, but not every story needs an audience. As we age, our emotional wounds become layered, not just with pain, but with meaning. Some are still raw, others are simply sacred. But either way, when we share our most painful memories too freely, we open the door to misunderstanding, misuse, and sometimes even betrayal. Take Elaine. She was 70 when she joined a support circle after losing her son. In that space, she opened up, not because she wanted sympathy, but because she wanted connection. Weeks later, a group member shared her story at a public event without permission. It was well-intended, maybe, but it left Elaine feeling stripped, exposed. She told me, it was like someone borrowed my grief and gave it a voice I didn't choose. Psychologically, sharing pain creates vulnerability, but when that vulnerability isn't met with care, it can re-traumatize. Pain is real whether it's spoken or not, and healing doesn't always require retelling the wound. Practical tip. Before sharing your story, ask yourself, will this help me heal, or am I hoping someone else will validate my pain? Choose your listeners with care. Prefer those who listen with presence, not performance. What memory do you hold close, not because you're hiding it, but because it's sacred? If this spoke to you, drop an icon or type sacred in the comments. And even as we protect our past, our future hopes deserve just as much care, especially the dreams that still quietly flicker inside us. Even in our later years, dreams don't disappear, they simply change shape. They become quieter, more personal, a trip you never took, a garden you still want to plant, a story you want to write but haven't yet. They become less about achievement and more about meaning, but here's the danger. When you share your tender dreams with someone who doesn't understand them, it can feel like they're snuffing out your spark. I remember a man named Robert, 75, who shared with his grown children that he wanted to learn to play piano. One of them laughed and said, "At your age, what for?" And that was it. He never mentioned it again. The dream didn't die, but it dimmed. That tiny light inside, the one that makes us feel alive, flickered under the weight of someone else's limitation. Here's the truth. Your dreams are no less worthy just because you have gray hair. In fact, they might be more sacred now than ever before. Practical tip: keep a private list of things that still light you up, places, skills, experiences. Visit it often. Share it only with those who celebrate your spark, not question it. What's one quiet dream you still hold close? Comment spark if you're still dreaming, still reaching, still becoming. And finally, while dreams can lift us forward, there's one more thing that can quietly weigh us down if left unchecked: resentment. Resentment doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers quietly over the years, building layer by layer until it becomes part of the background noise of our lives. And here's the trap: talking about it over and over doesn't always bring relief. In fact, the more we speak about our bitterness, the more we rehearse it, the stronger it grows. I met a man named Leonard, 80 years old, who spoke often about his brother-in-law, how he'd been betrayed in a business deal decades ago. Every time Leonard told the story, you could feel the tension return to his voice, his hands, even his posture. The betrayal was old, but the pain was alive because he kept giving it breath. Sometimes we mistake venting for healing, but healing isn't about repeating the story, it's about rewriting our role in it. Leonard eventually found peace not by confronting the man, but by writing down everything he never got to say, then choosing to forgive for his own freedom, not the other person's. Practical tip: when resentment rises, ask, what part of me still needs closure? Then give that part a voice, in private, in prayer, or in a letter you'll never send. Is there something you're ready to let go of, not for them, but for you? Drop a flame if it's time to release the weight and walk lighter. You might be asking yourself right now, if I'm not supposed to share everything, what should I share? The answer is simple but powerful. Share the parts of you that nourish others and that nourish you. Share your laughter, your wisdom, your beautiful, imperfect stories that speak to the soul. Share your favorite memories from childhood, the songs that still move you, the foods that remind you of home. Share the life you've lived, not the wounds you're still healing from. Share your quiet strength, the way you've made it through grief, through change, through days you never thought you'd survive. That's your light. That's your gift, but keep sacred the parts of you that are still tender, not because you're hiding, but because you've earned the right to choose who gets access to the deepest. In parts of you, you are not a confession booth, you are a temple. Let people enter slowly, let them take off their shoes, let them learn how to be in your presence with respect. You don't need to shout your story to the world, you just need a few kind eyes who truly see you. If this message speaks to you, comment temple below. Let's remind each other that age doesn't make us less, it makes us sacred. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. We're building something gentle and strong here, and your presence makes it richer.